Nominal morphosyntax, and the first presentation by Josephat Rugemalira is on the Proto-Bantu noun phrase structure. You're the floor.
Yeah. Thank you. Bantu grammatical reconstructions makes a very strong claim, regarding the order of elements in the noun phrase. That it is relatively fixed, and in that formula, the noun is followed by a noun, a connective noun, an adjective, and then any number of elements and the numeral at the end, final. And there is an example in 2. I'm not sure which language it comes from, but you can see the noun, knives, then the connective noun of children, then the adjective long, and the numeral 3. It also makes a guess regarding the order of a noun and determiner, and suggests that perhaps it was possible also to have a demonstrative before the noun. And that was regarded as a deviation from the norm. And then poses a question. In 3, in 4, that not certain how far the recurrence can go, the repetition and redoing the structures over and over again. But there are 2 types of recursion here, and the first type is in 5. That long Swahili phrase. If we don't speak Swahili, of course, I want to simplify it in 6. Maybe it's much more visually available there. You can see you begin out with the head noun, ngu, noun, and then there's an adjective followed by a connective noun, and it is in that connective noun of table where you get another table. So you can start all over again, repeating. You have a possessive, a demonstrative, an adjective, and then a connective noun, and then you start all over again. The noun in there, room, gets an adjective after, and a connective noun again, wageni, guests, and then the possessive, adjective, this time a relative clause, but in that relative clause you also have a noun, so you can go on. And you are familiar with the claim that you could go on forever until the Savior returns. But the second type of recurrence is suggested in the general formula, Nelson's general formula, repeated here, which says that after the adjective, you can have any number of elements. Any number. And this recently has been debated a lot, reported on a lot. So the question then is, what is the full list of dependents we can have? And if we have them, can they co-occur? Can you repeat some of them? In 7, I want to show what I claim is the definitive list, the exhaustive list of the elements you can have. There is an asterisk on quantifier. These are like very special kind of items, closed set, or both other alone, and you would normally would be tempted to think many and few would belong to this category. But on the basis of the morphology, usually these are fall under adjective. Now, if you exclude two in that set, take out distributive and take out recognizer, I want to show in 8 that there is a complication with each of these. And I'm working this backwards. That each of these can occur alone without a head noun, and so they are pronominal. In 8a, the possessive. In 8b, the connective noun of children. In 8c, the interrogative, question word, we heard about that. 8d, quantifier all. And 8e, adjective new, vipia. 8f, demonstrative. This happens to be the disto, really. 8g, ordinal. You will see that there is similarity in structure between 8b and 8g. The structure is the same, it's connective noun. 8h, that's the numeral. And 8I, that's the relative clause. In each of those, you see what we should have started out with if we return to the fixed head-dependent pattern. In 9, you will see that it is possible to insert the head noun in before each of those, so that the order is canonically then noun and dependent after. It's the same noun throughout the taboo books. And why is that a problem? That pronominalization is a complication, because it creates chaos, that people are free to do what they want and not follow the rules. The rule is noun followed by dependent. But if the status of these items is improved so that they become pronominals, then they can be free to move around. It's like, if it reminds me of what happened at one meeting of the G20 heads of state. I think President Trump was accompanied by his daughter, and he had to go out and meet one of the other heads of state for a few minutes. I think they said 20 minutes, and then Ivanka Trump took his chair. It's like the child raised, being raised, status raising them, it's the same level as the father. Now the question is whether after you have tested the authority of the chair, you go back lower or you remain in the same level. You are in a position, sort of. This is what is happening to this dependency, I would want to say. And I want to show in 10 that in another language, not just Swahili, in Nyambo, you can have some of these at least before the head noun. So in 10a, that's the quantifier. Liona epitabo kabura. Raleigh wants me to say that. In 8b, that's other. D, we saw in D, I think here. Bindi, epitabo kabura. So you can have it before the head noun. In C, of course, that one everybody would be expecting it, because the demonstrative, almost everybody says, oh, that one. Even Merson said that. Have it before. The question is whether this flexibility, these possibilities are just limited to a few categories. You can see there are 3 possibilities here out of all those 9. In 11, 12, you can see the adjective. I wouldn't accept those, getting the adjective before. Or should we rather think that there are variations depending on the language and depending on the context, and so that they are deviating from the rule in those circumstances, that each language maybe has developed its own deviations, which ones it would accept, and which ones not. See, in 13, there's a quote from Chitebeta, Lenje, the Lenje quantifier may be preposed if there is an adjective in the NP. Or one from Larry in 14, possessive pronouns and demonstratives also can occur before the noun is in focus. I want to give 2 examples to show that this, what we may regard as deviation, is perhaps an instance of structural change. In 15, demonstratives, these are from Nyakyusa, and if you remember, Melson talked about presentative forms of demonstratives. In Nyakyusa in 15a, this is the normal order. The head noun followed by a possessive, followed by a demonstrative and an adjective. But in B, the demonstrative comes before, and the gloss, you know it, has a copula in there. This is the white hen of mine, suggesting that it's not just change of order, that there is a structural change here. It's no longer, the demonstrative is here, no longer in the noun phrase. In the next one, it has been said that at least in some of these languages, there is a definite article born into the language. And this is from Nyankore. It's the same in Runyambo, the same in Kinyarwanda. That this item with the R and agreeing by noun class would be considered like a definite article, like what you have in English or the other languages with articles. This, but as Asim in the PhD notes very well, it's not just a definite article. This is what I call the recognizer in my list in 7, that it has a recognitional role of activating shared knowledge. And you can do that, this recognitional role, you can do the same thing with the distal demonstrative, or with the demonstrative, you see in 17. Again, before, Buriyamati, so it's the same here as in 16. And you will note that in 17, this demonstrative has anaphoric meaning and lacks the deictic feature. part of this change is also semantic. We may say in these two examples, 15 and 17, 16, 17, that what is involved is a change in the structural patterns. But we could also say that there is a change in the semantics. In 18, would like to look at the D form again, the other, and say that the usual pattern, the usual way we would use it is after the head noun, like the other dependents, but combined with this so-called definite article. So you combine it with D and you have really a normal dependent in 15, in 18a, that tree or the tree can appear alone, so it is can make it a pronoun in 18b, or it can come before in 18c. So it behaves like the others here. So I would say it's not something new. It fits into the pronominalization pattern of the other dependents of C, and you can see the structure is connective noun. The recognition or role of this may be contrasted with the normal interpretations in 19. Another tree, see 19a, can come before in 19b, another tree, and in C, alone, another one. D can be nominalized D on its own, you see, taking it to extremes. So in 20, ahandi is another place. 18b, obundi is another occasion, another time. And then you can have it in C, the cognitional, that other place. Or welcomed in D, that other occasion. Let me summarize first this part. So as the various dependents of the noun become eligible for nominal or pronominal status, so also their canonical position after the noun becomes blurred. This blurring of position does not apply to every category or in every language in equal measure, and it is debatable whether the demonstratives are the most advanced category in this grammaticalization process. That is, has freed the dependents to move about and around the head noun and even out of the noun phrase. Now, to the question of how do you order these, now that we know what they are. I think most of the literature that has taken up this subject during the past few years, most of them would have shown that the possessive has a special position immediately after the head noun. And that is shown in 21 and 22 and 23, showing that this closeness is sometimes shown by the ability, the possibility of affixing, criticizing the possessive onto the head noun. Apparently this can be done in 24 with any noun. You see, in those three examples above, these are like roughly in the kinship terms. But in 24, you can do it with book, nothing to do with kinship. This is also possible with the demonstrative. Usually after possessive, it looks like next in rank, maybe the demonstrative. And again, possible to affix this. This is in 25. This is from Bamunka.
Where is that?
I couldn't figure out the zone, but it's probably northwest.
Yeah, it's Grassfield.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
What wasn't clear from the literature was whether the demonstratives, if it's a full word, how do you choose whether you choose the full word or the affix? And if you have the affix, as the demonstrative is affix, and also the possessive is affix, can they co-occur? I would like to find out more about those. So after you've taken care of these two, the possessive and the demonstrative, then you have a good a mix of these other items: adjective, numeral, connective noun, quantifier, and ordinal. These, it's like there is a lot of freedom. They can occur like in any order. And that's where mostly there is disagreement, talking about flexibility, which would come first, which would come last. You can see this will include also Merson's general formula about the numeral must be last. And there are many examples where this is not true. I want to show how these items we can confuse ourselves in discussing their position because of the variations, the huge variations in categorizing them. What kind of category, what are they, and what sorts of structures they come with. So in 29, you see an example of the numeral. See, you think it's very easy to identify the numeral. But in 29, you see, in 29A, it's like an adjective. Likumi limo, so it's 110. In B, makumi, see, this is a noun, and it takes an adjective, and the adjective happens to be a numeral, two tens. So you can have numerals as nouns or as adjective-like items. But in C, 29C, that's the extreme. It's what is it? This is like French. You have a head noun, children or child, and there is a possessive. But the items that follow really are nouns. So why is this important? If you have a structure like 29C and you want to have something to follow, so you have saying 71 children, good, will good follow 71. It will be extremely difficult to have that kind of structure because there is a noun which will be assumed to be the one taking the modifier which follows. So that gets into the connective noun. That's the same structure. Connective followed by noun. So we just quickly say that there is variable ordering for these items: adjective, numeral, connective noun, quantifier, ordinal. That these are related, and it is not possible to say even reconstruct an original order in which they would have come. And that complexity in structure relates very, very well to relative clauses. in 31, trying to show how the adjective good cannot come after the relative clause. It must be before. If you put it after, it won't work. It's like it is modifying the relative clause and not the head noun. See, in 33 and 34, a very good return to the connective noun. Watoto wa kwanza, also wa kwanza is the ordinal. It's a connective noun. So that means the first children who passed the examination. And so the relative clause is at the end. In 34, you put the ordinal later. So watoto walioshinda mtihani wa kwanza. It's a different thing altogether. It's the first, the examination which is first. Keep all this and then say in the next page, my summary that really any number of elements has to be understood in two senses. First, in the embedding sense, like we saw in that first noun phrase. Also in the stacking sense, that you can have several adjectives. For instance, you can see there in 37, or several nouns in 38. So the general formula then, you need to modify it. 39, if there is a possessive form, it will be immediately after the noun. If there is a demonstrative, it will follow the possessive. If there is a relative clause, it will be final. There is an interrogative, it will be final, and perhaps with no sisters to come with it. Any other thing will come in between those. I wanted to say a few things about the distributive. Bully is kind of restricted to the inter-Christian region. Killer is moving very fast from the east, and it is a borrowing from Arabic. And the others in 42, you have different items, B, C, D, E. You see they are in the zone E area. They look alike. Nyakyusa is in 42A, special, separate, Kokuti, and 42F, console, also. All these come before the noun, before the head noun. Whereas in 43, we're showing items which may come before or after. So I want to suppose that the universal postnominal or, ote, in Kiswahili, was the original kind of distributive determiner, because you see, ote means all, or it means each one. And the example from Gogo in 44 shows that. But that there is a selective sense, which is in 45, which is a reduplicative structure. So thing 1, so if you are selecting, so out of 50, take one out of every 50, you can see the structure. It's thing 1 among, or in things 50-50. So I would think this was the way you would do the selective sense of the distributive, and that it was eventually replaced by buri in some of these languages, and the examples in 46, 47, 48 are trying to show you where we might have gotten buri. That is from the verb li, and with an agreeing affix before. And so in buri viungo doesn't appear in Chigogo, but I would want to suppose that they did have it, got lost. Now Gogo has killer, which is borrowed. But this would have been a much later thing, so that the original pattern really was the the repetitive theme, 1-1, 50-50. In that table, you have a sample of these items, those that come before and those that come after the noun. You can see Swahili with the killer. I would say a good example of how I think an item can be borrowed and move very fast, and people think it is native. But this is, I think, according to my Arab experts, this is truly Arabic. You will see that in the other languages that have a form based on the original author onset, it is possible for this to be after or before. So I'm going to claim that the original noun phrase had everything after the head noun, and anything that we see now before is really something new and recent. Thank you.
10 minutes for discussion.
I have a couple of observations about things that are related to this, but didn't get mentioned. For example, in Swahili, and Yenike in a dissertation also observed it for Makua in speaking, narrating, and actually talking. You can get the demonstrative in both places before the noun, you know, yule to yule, like that. Okay, that's one thing. And I thought it was interesting when she brought up that that's also done, so that might have a wider distribution. The other thing is with the possessive, so zake tabia, okay, or tabia zake. Very common in Swahili poetry, old and even now, and in popular songs in Taarab, to use the other order. In fact, I've been struck, I never looked into it, but I've always been struck that for some reason poetry seems to like that, and popular song. I'm sure you're familiar with what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to throw that in as something that's happening.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the demonstrative, everybody says, yes, this is the free thing which can come before or after, and there is a whole literature on the distinctions, what they mean. What you add about the possessive, that's actually very good, reinforcing my point that they are moving out to before because of this change in the structures that are happening, that the original was after, and the before is a development we are seeing.
Yeah, maybe unjustifiably, I think of it as old because it's already in the old Swahili poetry.
Sure.
But they keep that device. And I guess another thing that occurs to me is the augment looks like it's something that's left over from some old demonstrative, and I think that was said about the augment when we talked about the augment, and that's before the noun. So I suspect that that was always an option, maybe all the way back to Proto-Bantu and even before that. But no evidence for anything else being like that.
Yes.
Well, it's a different question. You want to answer that?
I wouldn't very easily be inclined to be thinking of the augment at the level of noun phrase, rather at the level of just the noun as even part of the noun.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's the way it is now, but where it came from, demonstrative, everybody was saying it's like a weak demonstrative. Not everybody, but seemed to be the explanation for how it developed. Go ahead.
I was wondering whether you have found cases where when you have two modifiers, a noun with a noun, whether you can use the relative order of the two modifiers for contrastive purposes, as if the second one would modify the inner one as in the question, I have 2 pens here, and I said, can I borrow your red pen? And I said, no, use your own. And then you said, no, I want your red pen. So could you make, can you use it in that way?
With the augment?
Like,
Well, yeah, in Nyamwezi also you could use an augment there.
Yeah.
But in Swahili, when you don't have an augment, could you use
Yeah.
the order?
kalamu yako,
Kalamu yako nyekundu.
kalamu yako nyekundu,
Or kalamu nyekundu yako.
kalamu nyekundu yako. No.
I mean, my intonation is it's English now. It's not
No, and that for me would seem like it's the special position of the possessive that the possessive needs to follow immediately after
Okay,
the noun.
and if you take 2 descriptive adjectives like the short one and the short red one and the long red one, can you give me your long red pen or your long red pen?
Not the long red one, the short red one.
Kalamu yako ndefu nyekundu.
And can you kalamu yako nyekundu ndefu?
Nyekundu ndefu, yes.
Then you, and would there be a difference in meaning between those 2?
I don't think so, no. That's
Not- you
the
can't use
case that I
contrastive.
would call, that you can pile up many of them there. Yeah, you can have several nouns or adjectives.
Maybe.
Yeah, I guess my question is more directed at the languages such as Nyambo, which have an augment, because one of the things about that striking about the languages you cited in that group, you know, the JE area, is that there's a special form of the possessive pronouns when they follow the verb, but if the noun. But if they don't follow the noun, then you get the augment. And it was, you know, so it hypothetically should be possible to have different orders, but it raises the question about what the relation is. And one of the things that you could, that happens here too, and then is that the noun plus either a possessive or a connective can be shown to form a single tone group. You know, for in Haya it was a reduction of high tones on the noun when it's followed by a connective and that kind of thing. But when it's outside, when it's not there, when it's something intervening, then of course it doesn't do that, and other modifiers will not join that way. So it's something that correlates with the order that you're proposing. That not only the cliticization that you showed, but also this tonal interaction that isn't there with the ones that are further out. In Haya, I remember different from Luganda. Luganda, it's only the possessives, okay, possessive pronouns and the connectives. In Haya, I remember it was optionally an adjective could join, a numeral could not.
Yes, I didn't mention the presence or absence of augment here, but you can see it fits into my suggestion that we are dealing with different structures whenever we see this difference in ordering, that we are no longer within the same noun phrase here.
My question is also about the augment. Can you go to example 10? I've seen that the vowel is maintained, and in the other examples we have given in other languages like Mekusa and even in Kinyarwanda, the languages of the region, augment is normally deleted after the demonstrative. Now I'm wondering if in that example it is pronounced.
It is.
Like C.
Yeah, you want me to pronounce it for you?
Read. So it means Nyambo is especially not in keeping the augment after the demonstrative.
There are cases where the augment goes, of course, but not in these.
Booly will make it fall
If I were to do that for C, you remember Viria was in the recognitional thing, so it will be verihabitable. That's the recognition of it without the augment.
Does it mean the same thing?
No, that's the recognition or use of media.
And the others?
Yeah. But this one, media, really bitaw bikabura, it's a normal demonstrative.
That suggests it's recent, probably, right?
I would think.
Because not all the languages can do that either.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say they are recent, so the original is everything after the noun phrase. Well, that's my motto.
Whereas Buli, that's older and that cannot take an augment.
It doesn't take it. Yeah. But earlier, that's also relative. As you can see, I was trying to show that it came out of a combination of Li and
Yeah, where you don't get the augment, right,
Yeah.
after the copula.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One last question? Or we continue during the lunch break?
Yes.
Thank you.